Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I used to think marriage was about patience, about putting in the effort, about enduring the hard times because that's what love meant. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a husband and became something else entirely. A punching bag, a background character in my own home. Lauren had always been strong-willed. I used to admire that about her. She was confident, direct, never hesitated to speak her mind. But as the years passed, I realized her confidence had a price, my dignity. At first, the insults were subtle. Jokes at my expense when we were out with friends. "You know, Mike, not exactly the handyman type," she'd say, laughing as I stood there forcing a smile. Little comments about my job, my parenting, my existence. "Honestly, I don't know how you'd survive without me," she'd sigh, rolling her eyes when I forgot to grab something from the store. I let it go, every time, because what was the alternative? Starting an argument over something small? Being the guy who couldn't take a joke? But over time, those jokes turned into something sharper, something that didn't feel like teasing anymore. The breaking point came at a family gathering. We were at her parents' house, sitting around the dinner table. The conversation had drifted to careers, life goals, all the usual small talk. Her brother, Greg, had just landed a big promotion. Her sister, Rachel, was talking about her plans to go back to school. Then, the attention turned to me. "So, Mike," her father said, setting down his fork. "How's work been?" Before I could answer, Lauren cut in. "Oh, same as always," she said with a smirk. "Mike's job isn't exactly high stress. He just coasts." I froze, my stomach twisting. Coasts. The word landed harder than it should have. Her family chuckled. Greg shook his head with a grin. "Must be nice, man." I swallowed my pride, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, real nice." But Lauren wasn't done. She turned to Rachel, nudging her playfully. "Hey, if that whole grad school thing doesn't work out, maybe you can do what Mike does." Pretty sure anyone could. Laughter. Again, something inside me snapped. I set my fork down carefully. "You know, Lauren," I said, my voice steady, "it's funny how you act like my job is a joke when I'm the one keeping this house running." The table went silent. Lauren's smile faded just a fraction. "Oh, come on. I was just teasing." "No," I said. "You weren't." A thick tension filled the room. I could feel the eyes on me, everyone waiting to see if I'd let it go. And for the first time, I didn't. I pushed my chair back, standing. "Thanks for dinner," I said to her parents. "I think I'm done here." Without waiting for a response, I walked out. And as I stepped outside into the cold evening air, something inside me shifted. I had spent years swallowing my pride. I was done. I didn't go home right away after leaving Lauren's parents' house. I drove around for a while, letting the city lights blur past, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My mind kept replaying the scene at the dinner table. Lauren's smirk, the laughter, the way I had sat there and taken it for so long. I had let it happen. That thought burned more than anything else. I had spent years making excuses, convincing myself that this was just how she was, blunt, sarcastic, tough. But the truth was simpler. She didn't respect me. She never had. By the time I pulled into her driveway, the house was dark. Lauren was already home, but she hadn't bothered to text or call. No apology, no "where are you?" Nothing. I stepped inside quietly, half expecting her to be waiting, ready to argue. But the only sound was the low hum of the TV in the living room. She was curled up on the couch, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I stood there for a moment, watching her, waiting. Finally, I spoke. "You're not going to say anything?" She glanced up, feigning confusion. "About what?" I clenched my jaw. "About dinner. About what you said." She let out a sigh, setting her phone down. "Oh my God, Mike. Are you still mad about that?" "It was a joke." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No, Lauren, it wasn't. You humiliated me in front of your whole family." She scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic." Everyone knew I was kidding. I stared at her, disbelief rising in my chest. Did they? Because I sure didn't. She rolled her eyes. "You're being sensitive. You always take things so personally." That was her go-to move, turn it around on me. Made me feel like the problem. I didn't take the bait this time. Instead, I nodded slowly, stepping back. You know what? I'm done talking about this. She shrugged. Fine by me. And just like that, she picked up her phone again, dismissing me. Something inside me twisted. I turned and walked upstairs, shutting the bedroom door behind me. But sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This wasn't just one bad night. This was our life. And for the first time, I let myself wonder what it would be like if it wasn't. A few days later, Lauren and I met up with some friends for drinks. I wasn't in the mood to go, but she insisted. It'll be fun, she said. You need to loosen up. That should have been my first warning. The bar was packed when we arrived, the usual crowd of people laughing over cocktails and overpriced beer. We met up with our group in the back. 6 of us squeezed into a booth, the drinks already flowing. For the first hour, things were fine. I made small talk, sipped my beer, played the role of the easygoing husband. Then Lauren started telling stories. You guys should have seen Mike at home the other day, she said, laughing as she leaned into her friend Jessica. He tried fixing the garbage disposal and almost flooded the whole kitchen. Jessica smirked. You? Doing handyman work? Lauren shook her head, grinning. I know, right? I told him to just leave it alone, but he wanted to play Mr. Fix-It. She turned to me, smirking. How'd that work out, babe? Laughter. I forced a chuckle, taking a sip of my drink. Yeah, real funny. I was used to this, being the joke. But then she kept going. You know, Mike always says he wants to start his own business, she said, shaking her head. Can you imagine? My husband, an entrepreneur? Jessica raised an eyebrow. What kind of business? Lauren waved her hand dismissively. Something small. He thinks he could run a consulting firm or something. But let's be real, Mike's never been the ambitious type. My stomach tightened. I mean, she continued, laughing, he's a great guy, don't get me wrong. But let's just say, I don't have to worry about him being a big-shot CEO anytime soon. The table erupted with laughter, and something inside me snapped. I set my drink down carefully, my heart pounding in my ears. You know what's funny, Lauren? I said, my voice calm but sharp. You acting like I'm some failure while I'm the one keeping our whole life together. The table went dead silent. Lauren's smile froze. What? I leaned forward, holding her gaze. You mock my job, but I pay the bills. You make fun of me for wanting to start something of my own, but I've supported every single one of your decisions without question. And yet, every chance you get, you make me the punchline. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. Lauren blinked, clearly caught off guard. Mike, come on. You're taking this the wrong way. No, I said, shaking my head. I'm taking it exactly how it was meant. You don't respect me. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if you ever did. Her jaw tightened. Mike, let's not do this here. Why not? I gestured around the table. You never seem to have a problem embarrassing me in front of other people. Silence. Lauren's face was flushed now, her nails digging into the table. I exhaled, pushing my chair back. You guys enjoy your night, I said to the rest of them. I think I'm done here. And for the second time in a week, I walked away. But this time, I wasn't looking back. I didn't go home after leaving the bar. I drove for hours, the city lights flashing by in a blur, my mind racing with everything I had just said to Lauren. She had spent years making me feel small, treating me like I was nothing more than a supporting character in her life. And I had let it happen. Not anymore. By the time I finally pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Lauren's car was there, which meant she had come home before me. I wasn't sure what kind of reaction I was walking into, but I was done playing nice. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. The living room was empty, but I could hear the faint sound of the TV upstairs. I debated going up, bracing for a fight, but I was too tired. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. I took a long sip, closing my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control again. Then, something caught my eye. A small, neatly wrapped gift box sitting on the dining table. I frowned, setting my beer down. The box was tied with a silver ribbon, the kind of careful wrapping that meant it wasn't something she had just thrown together. Curious, I picked it up. It was heavy. I untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and felt my stomach drop. Inside was a men's watch, a sleek, high-end brand, easily worth a couple $1,000s. It wasn't for me. I didn't own a watch like this. And Lauren had never mentioned buying me one. Slowly, my hands tightening, I turned it over. There was an engraving on the back. For the man who makes my heart race. My breath caught in my throat. A cold, sinking feeling spread through my chest as I stared at those words. I wasn't that man. Lauren had bought this for someone else. I set the box down carefully, my fingers numb. The room around me suddenly felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of the TV upstairs. It all faded into the background as the reality of what I was holding crashed over me. She was cheating, and just like that, everything made sense. The way she had been treating me. The way she constantly put me down, like she needed to convince herself that I wasn't enough. The way she had pushed me away for so long. She had already replaced me. I inhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. My first instinct was to storm upstairs, shove the box in her face, demand answers. But what good would that do? She would lie. She would twist it. She would gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. No, if I wanted the truth, I needed proof. I carefully placed the watch back into the box, readying the ribbon exactly as it had been. Then, I set it back on the table, making sure it looked untouched. I needed to know who it was. I needed to know how long this had been going on. And most importantly, I needed to make her pay. My hands curled into fists. She thought she had everything under control, that she could lie, manipulate, humiliate me, and get away with it. She had no idea that she had just lost. And now, it was my turn to play the game. I barely slept that night. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every possibility, every scenario. The weight of the truth settled over me like a lead blanket. Lauren was cheating. And not just cheating. She had been mocking me, tearing me down, gaslighting me while she snuck around with someone else. I kept thinking about the watch, the engraving, the deliberate way she had hidden it, waiting for just the right moment to hand it over to whoever she thought was worthy of it. She had no idea I had found it. And that was my advantage. By morning, I had made up my mind. I wasn't confronting her yet. Not until I had enough proof to destroy every single excuse she could come up with. She had played me for a fool for too long. Now it was my turn. Lauren's routine was predictable. Too predictable. That worked in my favor. She went to work at the same time every morning, left her phone on the charger while she showered, and never locked her personal laptop. She had always assumed I was too trusting to check. She was wrong. The moment she stepped into the bathroom that morning, I moved. Her phone was charging on the nightstand, the screen lighting up as I grabbed it. No pascode. She had never needed one. I opened her messages, scrolling through the most recent conversations. Then I saw it. A string of texts from a number not saved under a name. But the messages told me everything I needed to know. Him. Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? Lauren, soon. Mike has no clue. I swear, he actually thinks this baby is his. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The watch was bad enough. The texts were worse. But this was something else entirely. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay calm. She was pregnant, and she was telling another man that it was his child. It all made sense now. The sudden warmth, the fake affection, the way she had acted so excited when she told me she was pregnant, as if this was some miracle. She knew it wasn't mine, but she thought I would buy into her lie. I put the phone back exactly as I found it, and stepped out of the bedroom before my rage got the better of me. I needed to think. I needed a plan. Step one was simple. I needed more evidence. I wasn't going to take screenshots of her texts. She could claim they were out of context, fake, whatever excuse she could spin. I needed something undeniable. So I dug deeper. I went to her laptop and opened her email. She never logged out, never thought twice about keeping things secure. I searched for hotel reservations, travel confirmations, anything that could prove she had been sneaking around. It didn't take long. 2 weeks ago, she had booked a weekend getaway. A 5-star hotel, under her name, for 2 guests. I clenched my fists, forcing down the anger rising in my throat. Then I noticed something else, an email confirmation for a paternity test. Except it wasn't for me. Lauren had already scheduled the test with someone else. She had no intention of letting me be part of it. She just wanted to trap me into thinking the baby was mine until she could figure out her next move. I took a deep breath, backing away from the laptop. I had enough. Now I just had to set the trap. Step 2. I needed her to think everything was normal. I went about my day as if nothing had changed. I kissed her on the cheek before she left for work. I made dinner. I even played along with her fake excitement about the baby. If she noticed anything different, she didn't show it. Because in her mind, she had already won. She had convinced herself that I would accept her lie, that I was so blinded by trust that I would never question the impossible. That was her biggest mistake. Step 3. The final setup. I called the hospital where she had scheduled the paternity test and made a small adjustment. I told them I wanted to be tested as well, a secret request, one she wouldn't know about until it was too late. Then, I started making arrangements for the grand reveal. I reached out to both of our families, telling them I wanted to host a celebration at the hospital after Lauren gave birth. I want this to be special, I said. A real family moment. Everyone was thrilled. My parents, her parents, even her closest friends. They all thought I was the doting husband, the excited father-to-be. Lauren ate it up. She had no idea that I was planning her downfall in real time. Step 4. The final touch. I took the watch from its box, the one she had bought for him, and made a swap. The engraving now read, "For the woman who lost everything." I rewrapped the box and placed it back exactly where she had hidden it. Let her open it in front of him. Let her realize in that moment just how badly she had underestimated me. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Lauren breathe beside me. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that in just a few short months, her entire life would be destroyed in a single moment. And when the doctor finally said the words, "Mike, you are not the father," I would be the one smiling. The months leading up to Lauren's due date were a test of endurance. Every day, I had to wake up next to her, act like nothing had changed, play the role of excited husband and father-to-be. She had no idea I had already unraveled every single one of her lies. She still thought she was in control, that she had manipulated me into believing in this so-called miracle pregnancy. But I wasn't the clueless husband she imagined me to be. I was the man who was about to end her world, and I made sure she never saw it coming. 2 weeks before she was due, Lauren's baby shower took place at her parents' house. Everyone was there. Her family, mine, close friends, all of them celebrating the beautiful lie she had created. I watched as she soaked up the attention, her hand resting on her belly, playing the part of the glowing mother-to-be. She looked so proud of herself, so convinced she had won. I stood by her side, smiling, nodding, thanking people for their congratulations. But inside, I was counting down the days until it all came crashing down. The night before the hospital visit, Lauren was unusually affectionate. She curled up beside me in bed, resting her head on my chest, her fingers tracing absent patterns on my arm. "You're going to be such a great dad," she whispered. I looked down at her, forcing a small smile. "You really think so?" She nodded, kissing my cheek. "I know so." I could have said it right then. I could have told her I knew everything, that I had seen the texts, that I had changed the paternity test, that tomorrow would be the worst day of her life. But I didn't, because I wanted her to have one last night of peace. One last night before her entire world fell apart. The hospital was packed the next morning. The waiting room buzzed with energy. Our families gathered, waiting for the arrival of what they thought was our child. Lauren was prepped and taken to a private birthing suite, her mother holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. I stood by her other side, gripping her fingers, pretending like I still belonged in this moment. In the delivery room, I played my part perfectly. I held her hand, whispered encouragement, stroked her hair. She thought it was love. It wasn't. It was goodbye. And then, finally, it happened. The baby was born. A perfect, crying little bundle. The doctor announced the gender. Nurses moved around the room, and Lauren let out a shaky, exhausted laugh. "He's here," she whispered. "Our baby." I smiled down at her, my heart steady, my mind razor-sharp. It was time. A nurse came in and asked if I wanted to step outside with the doctor for a moment. Lauren didn't suspect anything. She smiled tiredly, thinking it was just routine. She had no idea I had arranged for the doctor to speak in front of everyone. We stepped out into the waiting room, where both families were gathered. Conversations quieted as I entered, all eyes turning toward me and the doctor beside me. The air shifted. The doctor cleared his throat, holding a folder in his hand. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice calm and professional. "We ran the paternity test you requested. The results came back sooner than expected." A pause. The room stilled. Then, the words I've been waiting for. "You're not the father." The silence was deafening. My mother gasped. Lauren's father took a sharp breath. People froze, their eyes darting between me and the doctor, trying to process what they had just heard. And then what? Lauren's voice rang out from behind me. I turned slowly. She was standing in the doorway, still in her hospital gown, clutching the frame for support. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. She had heard everything. I took a deep breath and reached into my pocket. And with deliberate slowness, I pulled out the divorce papers. The ones I had prepared weeks ago. I stepped toward her, holding them out. "Lauren," I said, my voice steady and calm. "This is the part where I walk away." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stared at the papers, at the cold, undeniable truth in my eyes, and something inside her broke. "Mike," she choked out. "Please, let's just talk about this." I shook my head. "There's nothing left to talk about." I turned to the doctor. "Thank you, sir." That's all I needed to hear. Then, without another glance at the woman who had destroyed our marriage, I walked out. And this time, I wasn't just leaving a room. I was leaving her behind for good. I stepped out of that hospital and into a new life. The cold air hit me like a shock, but I welcomed it. It was real, sharp, cleansing. Behind me, the waiting room was still in chaos. Voices raised, questions flying, Lauren likely sobbing and scrambling for an excuse, a way out, a way to make me the villain. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free. I walked across the parking lot, my footsteps steady, my heart light. I had parked my car near the entrance, knowing I wouldn't stay long. Everything had been planned perfectly. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and exhaled. It was over. No more manipulation. No more gaslighting. No more Lauren making me feel like I wasn't enough while she crept around behind my back. I pulled out my phone and saw the notifications rolling in. Lauren, 10 missed calls. Lauren, 3 new voicemails. Mom, 1 new message. Mike, call me when you can. Are you okay? I ignored Lauren's name, clicking on my mom's message instead. I'm fine, Mom. I just needed to get out of there. 3 dots appeared instantly. Mom, I can't believe this. She looked me in the eyes and let me believe that baby was yours. She let everyone believe it. Until she couldn't anymore. Mom, I'm proud of you for walking away. Let me know if you need anything. I smiled slightly, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat. Walking away had been the easy part. Now, I had to make sure she never had a way back in. I didn't go home that night. Technically, it wasn't even my home anymore. Lauren didn't know it yet, but I had moved out a week ago. I had rented a condo on the other side of town, packed my essentials when she was at work, and left nothing behind except for the divorce papers she would be forced to sign. I pulled into my new driveway, stepped inside, and locked the door. The place was quiet, still unfamiliar, but it was mine. No lingering memories of a broken marriage. No tainted history. Just a fresh start. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, sat down on the couch, and turned on the TV. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had nothing to worry about. And then my phone rang. I sighed, already knowing who it was. I let it go to voicemail, but a few seconds later, the notification popped up. I hesitated before pressing play. Her voice came through, shaking, desperate. Mike, please. You can't just walk away like that. You don't understand. I was scared, okay? I thought you'd leave me, so I panicked. A ragged breath. You're my husband. We can fix this. Please just call me back. I stared at the phone, feeling nothing. She was still lying, still trying to spin it, to make herself the victim. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she admit what she had done. She wasn't sorry for betraying me. She was sorry for getting caught. I deleted the voicemail. The next few days were filled with damage control. Lauren had taken her sob story straight to her friends, painting herself as the woman whose husband had abandoned her after she got pregnant. She conveniently left out the part where I had a vasectomy. The truth, however, had already spread. The hospital paternity test hadn't just shattered her carefully built lie. It had exposed her to everyone who mattered. I heard through mutual friends that Matthew, the guy she had been sneaking around with, had disappeared. He wasn't answering her calls, wasn't responding to texts. He had bailed the second he realized she had nothing left to lose. She had gambled everything on a lie, and now she had nothing. A week later, Lauren finally tracked me down. I was coming back from the grocery store, arms full of bags, when I saw her sitting on the steps of my condo. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She had been crying. I set the bags down, exhaling. "Lauren." She stood up quickly, wringing her hands. I didn't know where else to go. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard. "Can we talk? Just for a second?" I stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "Fine. Talk." She took a shaky breath. "I know I messed up, okay? I know I lied. But I swear to you, it wasn't supposed to be like this. She let out a small, broken laugh. "I thought I could make it work. I thought if you believed the baby was yours, we'd be happy." I shook my head. "You didn't want us to be happy. You wanted me to be your safety net." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not true." I scoffed. "Isn't it? You knew this baby wasn't mine. You knew it the second you found out you were pregnant. But instead of telling the truth, you tried to trap me. Because you didn't want to face the consequences of what you did." She wiped at her face. "Mike, please." I held up a hand. "No, there's nothing left to say. I already filed for divorce. You'll get the paperwork soon." Her face crumbled. "Please don't do this." I sighed, my voice calm, unshakable. "Lauren, you did this to yourself." Her shoulders slumped. She looked down, defeated, finally realizing, that she had no power over me anymore. She had lost. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Okay." And just like that, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling no anger, no regret, no sadness, just relief. She was finally out of my life, and I was never letting her back in. Lauren didn't contact me again after that night. At least, not directly. Instead, she did what she always did. She played the victim. Within days, I started hearing the whispers. Friends telling me that Lauren was spinning the story in her favor. According to her, I had walked out on her while she was pregnant, abandoned my own child, and left her to struggle alone. I wasn't surprised. Lauren had never been the type to take responsibility. She had to be the wounded party, the one people pitied, the one who never did anything wrong. But this time, she had no way to manipulate the truth. The paternity test had already exposed her. Everyone knew. Her family knew. My family knew. Our friends knew. No matter how hard she tried to control the narrative, the facts were set in stone. And now, it was time to make sure she never had the chance to screw me over again. I met with my lawyer the following week. His office was sleek and professional, lined with dark wooden shelves and framed degrees that reassured me I had picked the right man for the job. He was sharp, efficient, and had handled enough ugly divorces to know exactly how to shut down any of Lauren's tactics before she could use them. He leaned back in his chair, scanning through the file I'd handed him. "Well," he said, flipping a page, "this is about as open and shut as it gets." I exhaled. "You think so?" He nodded. "Absolutely. Paternity fraud is a serious issue. The fact that she knowingly tried to pass off another man's child as yours, that's going to work heavily in your favor. She's going to have a hard time convincing any judge that she deserves a dime from you." That was exactly what I wanted to hear. "I want this over with as fast as possible," I said. He nodded, pulling out a folder. "Then let's get started." Lauren was served with the divorce papers 2 days later. I wasn't there when it happened, but I got a text from one of her friends, a mutual acquaintance who had always liked stirring the pot. "Hannah, Lauren is freaking out. She just got served." I smirked. "Good." I didn't respond. She wasn't my problem anymore. But that didn't mean she wasn't going to try. 2 weeks later, we had our first legal meeting. I arrived at the law office early, settling into the conference room, my lawyer reviewing last-minute details beside me. Lauren was late, of course. She had to make an entrance. When she finally walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who used to be so put together, so in control, so arrogant now looked lost. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes weren't as polished as they used to be. And for the first time in forever, she didn't look like she had a plan. Good. She sat across from me, her lawyer beside her, stiff and uncomfortable. She didn't meet my eyes. The meeting started. My lawyer took control immediately. "This is a straightforward case," he said, sliding a document across the table. "There will be no alimony, no assets to divide. Mr. Thompson has already removed himself from the lease of the home, and he has no financial obligations toward the child, given the court-confirmed paternity results." Lauren's lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Thompson has expressed concerns about financial stability moving forward. Given the length of the marriage, she feels she is entitled to some compensation." I laughed out loud. Lauren finally looked up at me, her face flushed with anger. "That's funny to you?" I leaned forward. "You try to trap me with another man's kid, and now you think I owe you money?" I shook my head. "You're lucky I don't sue you for fraud." Her lips pressed together. "Mike, I held up a hand. Don't try to explain. Don't try to spin it. You got caught. The game is over." Her lawyer sighed, flipping through his notes. "Perhaps we should discuss a settlement." "No," I said sharply. Lauren's eyes flashed. "Mike, I have nothing." I shrugged. "Not my problem." Silence. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for a pen. "Fine." She signed the documents. And, just like that, she was officially out of my life. The finalization of the divorce came quicker than expected. Lauren had no fight left in her. She signed what she had to, and I never heard from her lawyer again. 1 week after it was over, I got a single text from her. "Lauren, I never thought this would be how we ended." I stared at it for a moment. Then, I deleted it. I didn't need closure. I had already won. The first morning after the divorce was finalized, I woke up to silence. But this time, it wasn't the kind of silence that comes from tension hanging in the air, from a cold shoulder in the bedroom, from waking up next to someone who had long since stopped loving me. No, this was peace. I sat up in bed, stretching, letting the weight of the last few months roll off my shoulders. No more Lauren. No more lies. No more waking up every day wondering how much of myself I'd have to shrink down just to keep the peace. I had my own place now. It wasn't a mansion, it wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. The walls didn't hold the echoes of old fights, of passive-aggressive comments, of a marriage that had rotted from the inside out. I got out of bed, brewed some coffee, and stepped onto my small balcony, letting the cool morning air wake me up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. For the first time, I was free. The next few weeks were about rebuilding. Not just my life, myself. I threw myself into my work, something I had neglected for far too long, while catering to Lauren's every whim. Before, she had convinced me that my dreams weren't worth pursuing, that my job wasn't real enough to build something for myself. She had been wrong. Within a month, I had secured my first major client for my consulting business, something I had wanted to start for years, but had always put off because of her. Without Lauren holding me back, I worked harder than I ever had before. I poured my energy into making something that was mine, and it paid off. By the time summer rolled around, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. But the biggest change? I reconnected. Lauren had done a great job isolating me during our marriage, whether she meant to or not. My friendships had faded, my family had grown distant, and I had been too stuck in her world to even notice how much I had lost. Not anymore. I called up my brother, the one who had always tried to get me to see Lauren for what she really was. We grabbed drinks, talked for hours, laughed. It had been years since I had laughed like that, genuinely, freely. I started showing up to family events again. Birthdays, barbecues, casual get-togethers. At first, there were whispers, people trying to be delicate about the situation about her. But eventually, the topic of Lauren faded, because I had moved on. And soon, so did everyone else. One afternoon, about 6 months after the divorce, I was sitting at a coffee shop, wrapping up some work on my laptop, when someone slid into the seat across from me. I looked up, expecting a waiter, maybe an old friend. Instead, it was her. Lauren. I blinked, caught off guard. She looked different. Not bad, but not like herself. Her usual perfect makeup was barely there. Her once expensive designer clothes replaced with something simpler. For the first time since I had known her, she looked unsure of herself. I set my coffee down. "Lauren," She hesitated. Hey, I didn't say anything. I just waited. She exhaled, looking down at the table. I didn't expect to see you here. I shrugged. I live nearby. She nodded, chewing her lip. I heard you started your own business. I smirked. I did. She hesitated again, like she was trying to find the right words. You look good, she finally said. I tilted my head. I feel good. Something flickered across her face. Regret. I knew what was happening. She had burned through every excuse, every safety net. Matthew, the guy she had thrown away our marriage for, was long gone. She had nothing left. And now, she was testing the waters, seeing if I'd let her back in. I leaned back in my chair. What do you want, Lauren? She swallowed. I don't know. I raised an eyebrow. She let out a nervous laugh. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For the first time, I believed her. But it didn't matter. I nodded. I hope you're doing okay. She blinked, like she wasn't expecting that answer. Yeah, I'm managing. I smiled slightly, standing up. Good. She looked up at me, searching my face like she was waiting for something. An invitation, a second chance, a moment of weakness. She didn't get one. I grabbed my coffee, slung my bag over my shoulder, and gave her a polite nod. Take care, Lauren. Then I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her sitting there, alone with the choices she made. I didn't look back. I never would. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.